You should only follow Sean for his YouTube channel if you're only going to follow one thing, because Sean's YouTube channel is fucking based.
So I'm so happy to bring you guys this very, very special video because the Serfs has crept out from his cave in order to make a response to my appearance on the Adam and Sitch show, or Sitch and Adam. Who really cares? Doesn't matter. This video is incredibly cringe, and because I'm instituting a new policy of monetizing communists, this video is brought to you by our sponsor today, My Patriot Supply. I'm a big fan of being prepared, whether you're worried about inflation, a storm that might cut off power, or just a frost like we saw recently in Texas. And one of the best things you can do to prepare for any kind of emergency is have some form of storable food inside your place, just in case for when it goes down. That's why I partnered with My Patriot Supply, and you can now go to preparewithajw.com in order to get yourself a discount of $50 on a 28-day supply of food. The food's delicious. They sent me some. I ate a bunch of it, and now I have to kind of get more. So I can personally attest to the fact that you're going to be all right if you get some of this food. Over 2,000 calories per day for the meals. Pretty good. And if you want to prepare long term, there's also a discount for a 3-month supply. Again, go to preparewithajw.com. That is preparewithajw.com. Get yourself some food, store it, and forget about it. And hopefully you never need it, but if you do, it will be there. Come on, you can't beat double monetizing a communist and selling preparation food in case their policies come to fruition. Pretty clever on my part. I've had that sponsor in my back pocket for over a month now, and I saved it for this special occasion.
A couple days ago, there was a debate. You may have seen it. Old friend, Actual Justice Warrior, was starring in that debate. They were talking about critical race theory and showing you how woefully uninformed conservatives are when it comes to most theory. After the debate, they wanted to have a little study session to figure out some of the ideas that they had perhaps gotten right or wrong. And so this is a little behind the scenes. Adam Friended.
But anyway, the Serfs decided that he was going to react to my appearance on Sitch and Friended show, where I was on with Aiden Paladin, or Paladin. Oh, I probably should have looked that up. Aiden's great, and I'm sorry for like misplacing that L in your name. Wonderful. And he clipped out this portion of the video where we were talking about IQ. And I'd like to say the Serfs took me out of context in the portion of the video that he clipped, but it would actually require some degree of intelligence to take me out of context. The Serf doesn't even bother, and he responds as if I'm saying something about race and IQ, even though the clip would indicate the opposite. And his audience has a very positive view of this, even though you can hear what I'm actually saying in the video. And if you don't believe me, it is that dumb, and that's why we're going over it today.
Yes,
the question I wanted to ask the other guy, what was his name?
Aaron.
Aaron? He kept highlighting the disparity and saying like, oh, it's due to racism, etc. First of all, I reject that notion. Like there's no two demographics of people. There's not even any two sexes within the same demographic of people that have equal outcome.
Right.
And like, if anything, the evidence shows that Black people do better in the United States of America than anywhere in the world. Like,
Yeah,
look at
anywhere in the world, dude.
Like, look at the gap between Black Americans and like Black people back in Africa. It's not even close. So like, I wanted his example. That's why I gave you your first bit of shekels, Adam and
Well,
PSA Sitch, where I was
We
like,
don't.
Now, I know a lot of you are saying mask off. I don't think there was much of one to begin with. Like, if you ever go and watch Actual Justice Warrior's catalog.
So one of the things I absolutely love about the Serfs opening with this clip in particular is that it just goes to show you how lacking in principle this guy is. Because I'm not sarcastically saying long live Israel. I support the Israeli state. I support the Jewish people having a state. You know who doesn't support either of those things? The Serfs. The Serfs raise money for a charity organization that's American branch was actually banned due to the fact that they had ties to Hamas. Another sister organization of the same umbrella organization that the Serfs raise money for actually had to have their entire board resign because of anti-Semitic comments that all of them made. That's who the Serfs is. And I often mock people on the internet and on this channel, but especially on Twitter, who can't see the moral difference between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I make fun of the idea that you think because the Israelis have a better military, they're immoral, even though the Palestinians tell you over and over again that they want to wipe out the Jewish people. If you can't see the moral difference between a stronger power that targets rockets being fired into their nation from a weaker power, and the weaker power that fires rockets randomly into a nation hoping to kill anybody because they want to kill all of the Jewish people, then I don't know what to tell you. And the Serfs is one of those people that can't make that distinguishment. Even worse, he makes the distinguishment on the wrong side of it. So he opens this up saying mask off. I guess he's putting his mask on because he hates the Jewish state. He does not want it to exist. He supports the people that are more in line with the Nazis than anybody on earth, as their driving, motivating force is to wipe the Jewish state and its people off the face of the earth. That's who the Serfs is. That's how he opened this video, and it's absolutely embarrassing, and he should be ashamed. So let me say this again. Long live Israel.
But it's never something good, by the way. There's no, like, I'm not a racist, but I'm not a raging sexist. No, I'm not in any way. But
so the next thing I want to point out should be clear and obvious to anybody in my audience. The Serfs is responding to this video because my previous video where I went after him and I showed you exactly what he tends to do, where he lies and weirdly enough projects things that he said onto me and then attacks them as cringe, was irrefutable. He can't touch that video. He can't play that video before his audience before even they will realize that the Serfs is a complete and total fraud. So he's desperately looking for something to attack me with, so he decided to go with this, even though I'm saying the actual opposite of what he's accusing me of saying.
I would actually disagree. I think IQ strongly correlates with success and
it does
at the individual level, but everyone wants to do it at the group level and say, like,
yes, and that.
Oh boy, we're going down the IQ rabbit hole right out of the gates. Yeah, IQ, as I sometimes have said on the show, is kind of like astrology for incels. IQ correlates strongly, and more strongly than anything else, to education and to education levels, and also to test fairing, of completely breaking apart the utter myth that is IQ and the fact that anyone would use it today as some kind of like objective science.
By the way, the Serfs doesn't believe that. If the Serfs believed that IQ didn't measure anything, like at all, then there would be no point of this video. There would be nothing to say further. If you say IQ doesn't measure anything, then why even bother to argue who has a higher or who has a lower IQ? It's a measurement of nothing. Truth be told, IQ is actually a relatively good predictor of success. We have a Polish study where they measured people's IQs at age 11, and when you came back 20 years later to meet these people as adults, their educational attainment, their job prospects, their stability, and their longevity, their life expectancy, all correlated relatively strongly with their IQ scores taken at age 11. So again, the idea that we're measuring nothing is just not the case. And if Lance truly believed that it was the case, he wouldn't have to go beyond this at all. He would just say it's not the case, total pseudoscience, therefore no need to talk about it. But he doesn't. He continues. Also, again, if Lance believed that IQ measured nothing, would he support the repeal of protections for people with below 70 IQ from certain criminal liabilities? Like, you can't execute somebody who's below 70 IQ because we deem that as mentally unfit to withstand trial because they can't conceptually understand their crime. Would he be in favor of getting rid of that? Do you think he would be in favor of getting rid of certain disability benefits that we give to people below 70 IQ because we determine that to be a cognitive disability that is worthy of care from our society? Absolutely not. Lance is only saying that it doesn't matter, and then going on to say that actually the scores are this and that, don't worry about it, don't look at it, because it makes him uncomfortable. And he's so uncomfortable by it, and so disingenuous, and so desperate for a win against me after being humiliated in each and every one of our interactions, that Lance is just trying to paint me as a racist for bringing up how early childhood development appears to, according to studies, determine to a certain extent an increase or decrease in your IQ.
Really good point. Why even say that? Why are you even talking about this if you understand that it's not prescriptive and the idea of associating race with IQ is kind of cringe?
Actually, it is important because like this territory has kind of been completely ceded to like the alt-right and your like people who are described race realists. One of the things that he figured out like by examining UK studies is that second children often have lower IQs than first children, and twins often have an average lower IQ than a normal firstborn child. But if one of the twins dies, then the other twin's IQ tends to normalize. What we learn from these studies that Thomas Sowell is referencing, that attention that your parent pays to the child in early childhood development has significant impact on IQ, which is relevant when we're talking about Black families because they have a significantly less percentage of two-parent households, and they'll have more kids per household.
So I have to give a lot of credit to Lance, and I mean this in the most genuine way possible. It's really difficult to find an audience, any group of people on the internet, that can watch you play a clip of somebody saying the exact opposite of what you're claiming, and then go along with you when you're claiming this, even though you've shown the evidence that disproves you. But Lance has done it. Lance has sought out across the internet to find people that are dumber than he is, so that he can have something to support his living. It's absolutely amazing. It's stunning. And again, he doesn't even have to take me out of context for these people to buy into his nonsense. Lance is trying to say that I'm making a race and IQ argument by showing video of me talking about how firstborn children seem to have higher IQ than secondborn children, and twins tend to have lower IQs than individual firstborns unless one of the twins dies. Now, you would think that you couldn't find 7 people on the planet that could hear something like that and assume that you are making a purely genetic argument, because obviously the implication of these studies are that attention from the parents in early childhood development has an impact on what your IQ will be later in life. By the way, most progressives believe some version of this. This is why they're in favor of early childhood education being paid for by the state, universal pre-K. This is one of Bernie Sanders' core things attached to his platform. They wouldn't believe this if they didn't think, and all the research didn't show, that early childhood development was incredibly important. But Lance managed to not only find 7 people to go along with his idiocy, he found over 300 people, as evidenced by the like to dislike ratio on this video, that can watch him do this and think, oh yeah, he was saying the thing, not that he was saying, but that Lance said that he was saying. Really?
The region where this becomes frighteningly racist is when you start applying things like race. Because again, race doesn't exist. So when you're like applying these pairings like they're doing here, saying like, well, Black people have lower percentage IQs. If they could only have more family members in their homes, those numbers would go up. Not to mention Asians have the highest IQs, so typically that's probably because they have so many parents. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen an Asian family, but usually they have like 14 dads and 23 mums. So it's thanks to that and the glory of that giant family dynamic that Asians are able to have such high IQ percentages. It's mostly because of those reasons, and it's fascinating.
So I love this clip for multiple different reasons. First and foremost, look how smug Lance is at his own joke. He thinks that his joke actually landed or made any sense at all. Number 2, Lance has a complete inability to understand basic concepts, and it's actually hilarious. So I said, and I pointed out to the studies that show this, that attention in early childhood development, especially undivided attention from the parents, appears to increase people's IQ scores. We've seen this in multiple different studies, even in twin studies. So if you have 2 parents in the household versus 1 parent, that would likely lead to more attention to the child and thus better, more positive results. And this just strongly correlates with all the other research that shows 2-parent households are better than single-parent households. But Serfs' response is that Asians must have 14 dads in the household.
They have so many parents. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen an Asian family, but usually they have like 14 dads and 23 mums. So it's thanks to that and the glory of that giant family dynamic that Asians are able to have such high IQ percentages. It's mostly because of those reasons, and it's fascinating.
Now, the second thing I love about this is that Lance plays this holier-than-thou progressive but he actually said something that's a little bit bordering on the anti-Asian stereotypes, if you catch my drift. Because traditionally, Asians actually, when they move out and get their own careers, have their parents move in with them so that they can take care of them. So in reality, there is an extra set of parents there, and I'm sure that helps in raising young children. And by the way, when I say Asians, I don't only mean East Asians, this is also true of Indian Americans, and this is from my personal experience and from the data. These are not the kind of people who traditionally put their parents in nursing homes or make them live alone. And the idea of not moving in your parents with your wife, especially if you're the oldest child, is really foreign to these people. It's very community oriented. So Lance making fun of the number of people in an Asian household is unintentionally anti-Asian racism. Bravo, Lance.
They have so many parents. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen an Asian family, but usually they have like 14 dads and 23 mums. So it's thanks to that and the glory of that giant family dynamic that Asians are able to have such high IQ percentages.
And the other thing I find really funny about this is that Lance somehow misconstrued me talking about higher rates of single-parent households with the idea that there are more physical people in the house. Asians don't have 14 fathers in their household, Lance, but they do have among the lowest single-parent household rates or single-mother household rates across any other demographic in the United States, the UK, and in Canada. So that's what I was referring to, Lance, and again, strong correlation between single-mother households and negative outcomes for the children. We see groups that have higher rates of single-parent households and higher rates of negative outcomes for the children. I know this makes you uncomfortable, Lance, that people might actually be responsible for their own behavior and be responsible for raising their own children. I know this might sound like it's a race realism to you, but this is what we see by the data, and we're talking about behavior, not anything to do with race.
I
That's what
think,
makes it cool.
I think I'm hearing like a little bit of the white guilt coming from Adam, because he keeps saying there's no genetic component.
White guilt.
Now, this is actually one of those instances where I will fully admit when I was wrong. I shouldn't have called Adam white guilted or anything of the sort. I was messing with him, but it doesn't look good when you're on somebody's show and it comes off like you're insulting him. Obviously, I was teasing him because I can sense how awkward the energy got in that room as soon as the idea of IQ, not anything to do with race, but the idea of IQ was brought up. So I was picking on Adam as a way to cut the tension, but it was disrespectful, and you shouldn't disrespect people when they invite you on your show, and Adam's always been super cool and gracious to me, and in fact, I'm not very educated on IQ overall. Adam actually sent me books arguing for his position on IQ, and I will end up reading them because that's how much faith I have in the guy, and if you haven't subscribed to Sitch and Adam or Adam's own show, you definitely should. And I'm apologizing publicly to Adam because that's what you do when you're actually in the wrong.
If you have two smart parents, then like chances are their child will be smart. Like obviously you inherit shit from your parents. What you're trying to say is that race is not the determinant factor of IQ. Like, but obviously genetic. Like,
But you just made an argument how culture affects IQ.
Yeah, there is.
So I wanted to play this closing clip because it just goes to show you how completely vacant intellectually the Serfs is. So he thinks Adam and I are disagreeing here, but what's happening is that I'm trying to rephrase what Adam is saying to be more accurate. Like, listen to what I actually said.
If you have two smart parents, then like chances are their child will be smart. Like obviously you inherit shit from your parents. What you're trying to say is that race is not the determinant factor of IQ.
Listen to what Adam's response is to what I actually said.
You just made an argument how culture affects IQ.
Yeah. Now, the little point of dispute that Adam and I had is that Adam was asserting, and wrongly so, that genetics equals race. And therefore, if you say that there's a genetic component to IQ, which by the way, there's a genetic component to everything, obviously we inherit stuff from our parents, this was the point I was trying to make, then therefore you're saying something about race being the determining factor of IQ, which I was saying was not the case. But the Serfs can't understand that because the Serfs is actually a white guilted coward who is an intellectual lightweight, who can't follow the conversation. All you could do is laugh like a seal.
Actually, it is important because like this territory has kind of been completely ceded to like the alt-right and your like people who are described race realists. And yeah, so like having two parents in the household can even improve those metrics. Like, but people have just ceded this territory. They're like, we're scared to talk about it, and there's no reason to.
I mean, honestly, it takes a very special kind of guy, and not in a good way, to hear me say that we should not cede this territory of discussion to the alt-right because we don't like the results. We should study it further to find out what this stuff actually means, and then get the opposite impression that therefore I was making some kind of alt-right arguments. Like, this is the low level that we're operating with when we're talking about the serfs. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box. Also support the sponsor, get your food. Go to my Teespring store. Everything's discounted. Till next time. Also monetizing communists. That's what I'm telling you to go all the things.